Tim Douglas is the editor of our review section. Now, Tim, I've got a confession for you. I have not watched Adolescence. Not because I'm too busy, but because I'm scared of it. Is this a show that's going to make me, totally despondent about this entire generation of kids that we're raising?
It's a difficult question to answer. Short answer is yes. Longer answer is no. Of course, the kids are going to be okay. The kids are all right, as they say. You would have seen in the news, Keir Starmer in the UK kind of advocated that every child in Britain should watch this show.
Yes, and at home we are watching Adolescence with our children. I've got a 16-year-old boy and a 14-year-old girl, and it's a very, very good documentary to watch, or drama.
The story revolves around 13-year-old Jamie, who's raised in a working-class suburban English home. The series begins with the police in a dawn raid outside their house, knocking the door down, and these very dramatic scenes kind of arresting this teenager in his bedroom with glow-in-the-dark stars on the walls and on the ceiling, and his bedspread.
What have you done?
The show then kind of shows him taken to the police station where he's processed and eventually charged with murder.
Jamie, I want you to listen carefully.
What's going on?
I'm going to start off with asking you.
Do you know a girl called Katie Leonard? Yeah? Describe each other as friends then.
Is she dead then?
Yeah, there's a tradition of dystopian television or film about young men, teenage boys or young men. A Clockwork Orange is probably the most famous example of that. I remember when I was, in my early 20s, a show called Kids came out, which really made me feel despair for my own generation or the generation just slightly after me. It seeps into your consciousness, doesn't it? This idea that a generation is doomed.
It does. You go back to William Golding and Lord of the Flies, and that's a microcosm of society represented through boys and violence. Much violence has been perpetrated by men. There's a real basis for this fictional show. This is the kind of controversial subgenre of male-dominated influences. People like Andrew Tate, who kind of advocate men's rights and basically oppose feminism. And so it's this idea that you might be fighting against those inner demons to be the most loving dad you can be and to kind of reverse the sins of your own father. But there are these outside influences that are even more kind of evil and insidious. We need to know what our kids are watching. Whether or not, again, it's a very alarmist view. I mean, are our children going to go out and murder someone this afternoon? A very unlikely proposition. Very unlikely.
Can we talk a little bit about that choice? Would it have been as effective if it hadn't been quite so catastrophic? Would it have been more real if it hadn't been quite so, alarmist?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because they clearly, as you say, went to that nth degree, and it's genuinely quite shocking.
Could you tell me what these emojis are? How embarrassing is that? Getting scared of a 13-year-old. Wow.
Their creative choices were very clear. They wanted to shock people here. They wanted to go and make a point.
They've chosen to make the central character a child who is supposed to be 13, I think is played by a 14 or 15-year-old who looks like he could be 11. I mean, he looks like a baby, doesn't he?
I think, again, another conscious choice for the casting directors there. There were 500 children. Owen Cooper was chosen from 500 of those actors, despite having zero acting experience. This is his first acting gig ever. Matthew Lewis, the cinematographer, I read an interview with him last week where he said, this kid's naivety was a superpower because he was a deer in the headlights. He did exactly what we said. And when the camera's flying around him in the interview room, he's as shocked as everybody else. Whether it's alarmist or whether it's ringing alarm bells, I think they're two different things. And I think that, there's been a little bit of commentary in the last couple of days that are leaning towards the latter, that it might be a little bit alarmist. That said, this show is 2 weeks old. It feels like it is the predominating conversation of 2025. Everyone's talking about it. Claire, you might be one of the only people that hasn't seen it. There's 66 million people streamed this show in the first 11 days of it being on Netflix. It is on track to become the biggest Netflix show in history. Stephen Graham, for him, this will be a crowning moment in his career, and I think we should expect awards season next year to be dominated by this show. But I do think also it's an interesting idea. The irony of this show in its own way is that, you know, men will be the ones that take home these awards. Men are the ones that predominate in this show. A really interesting takeaway is that, you know, men will kind of come out on top in this show that actually is about women.
I was a good mom. You was. I'm a good mom. You're a good dad, a great dad.
This one's focused on the family and the perpetrator, the alleged perpetrator. How do you think that works? Do they pull that off?
I think they pull it off, and I think because it's told basically through, you know, we focus on the child in the first episode, and then the family for the rest of it. And then the devastating kind of finale is focused almost exclusively on the parents and the father. But I think one of the strongest characters is actually the cinematography. I mean, this, as we alluded to before, is shot in one take. So you're talking about 70 minutes of film. If there's a mistake, they go back and start it again. So every episode was filmed at least 10 times. This is one of the most incredible kind of devices he's seen, because it brings you into the action in a very visceral, real way.
I know this has only been on TV for a couple of weeks, but in the kind of massive welter of publicity that's followed, you know, how do we sort of interpret Netflix's role in our society now? You know, is it just buying great shows that great artists have created, or does Netflix have a role in kind of shaping the way we're thinking about our society?
Yeah, that's a really good question. You know, I suppose Netflix exists almost in a parallel universe. We don't know so much about the streamer. They don't release a lot of data about, you know, what they create and who's watching. We do know what because this is such a phenomenon. But generally, they're kind of closed shop.
You do not tell me when to sit down! You do not control my... Look at me now!
Are we in a dystopian moment in film and television now? You know, The Brutalist is winning the awards in cinema. Severance is what everybody's talking about on TV. Some of these things are hard to consume.
They are dark. I mean, I think the interesting thing about something like The Brutalist and this show in particular is that they're kind of, you know, they're small fry that's just kind of gone off. I mean, The Brutalist was a pretty low budget film in the scheme of things, and so was Nora, which of course won everything. With respect to the dystopian thing, look, of course, the world's in an interesting place. I think geopolitically, you know, the climate's never really felt hotter. Perhaps this is a result of that sort of global tension.
Well, I might watch Adolescence, but then I'll be straight afterwards watching The Great British Bake Off to make myself feel better.
That's good. It'll be like getting the bends, but good luck with that. Just have some oxygen handy.
Tim Douglas, thank you very much.
Thanks, Claire.